Good afternoon and welcome to the relaunch of our Shine on Solar webinar series. Thanks for taking the time to join us, even in these very dark hours when Europe is on the brink of war again, after more than 50 years of peaceful coexistence. Today's topic could not be more spot on for that very reason. The very high energy prices we see today will for sure not go down in the light of the Russian aggression anytime soon. So what can we do? We need to become independent from countries which are not our friends. This has never been as evident as since 4 a.m. this morning. 41% of gas in Europe is coming from Russia. 47% of coal is coming from Russia. 27% of crude oil is not coming from Saudi Arabia, but from Russia. The only way out is to not being dependent anymore on fossil energy imports and use sun and wind and also other renewable sources to power our homes and our economies. So we need to deploy renewables much faster. Solar has already taken up speed. So we added some 25.9 gigawatt of solar to the European energy system last year. And as soon as 2025, we will be adding more than 50 gigawatt a year. But this is still far too slow. We are counting on the Renewable Energy Directive 3 to set higher renewables targets. 40% is not enough. And for sure, not under the current circumstances. We need at least 45% renewables by 2030. And the European Solar Strategy, which we will see being published in a couple of weeks' time, we hope it would further boost, and we are expecting it to further boost energy from the sun. We need to make sure that we also produce strategic solar capacities in Europe. At least 1/3 of our yearly demand should also be produced in Europe. And we have the means. We have the cutting edge technologies in Europe. We have bright scientists and engineers and a huge demand, as I just mentioned, to support manufacturing in Europe. We have to act now. There's no question. And also here we are trusting that the European Solar Strategy is taking very concrete actions. But in the meanwhile, how can we tackle the high energy prices? Gas prices already in these few hours since Russia's ruthless move jumped 41% up. Some European member states in the past weeks and months have already been reacting to their citizens and to their companies' outcry on their energy bills with different measures. The European Commission has reacted with guidance on measures and we'll do so again in a few days' time. So today we will first want to look into what the impacts of these measures are that certain member states are taking, and then have a debate on how solar can get us out of this crisis, and also whether today's markets are still fit for purpose under these circumstances. I am particularly delighted to welcome an excellent set of speakers, which I will introduce in a minute. And I haven't introduced myself, by the way. I'm Walburga Hemmetsberger, CEO of Solar Power Europe. But let me first share my gratitude in particular with you, Christian Buschoy, that you took the time to join us today with a very busy schedule you have as ITRE chair. And I would like to ask you first for some general remarks on the situation we have today, and also on how you think we should tackle the energy price crisis. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and congratulations for the initiative to discuss and explain to different stakeholders how solar solutions could tackle high energy prices on the medium and long term. Because the current situation shows us that we are not facing only the challenges, both of making our society fit for 55. It's a strong political will, it's a clear direction, but we still need to overcome some challenges or of making our power sector sustainable to respond to our globalized needs. But we need now also to face the challenge of energy supply and the crisis of rising prices of energy. And the job of the policymakers, as chairman of Industry Research and Energy Committee, I always advocate that the policymakers should mitigate all these risks in an open dialogue with all the stakeholders involved. That's why your input, your expertise, it's extremely valuable for me and my colleagues. We need, of course, to prepare the Fit for 55 ambitions, but capitalizing the opportunities to get there will not only make us competitive, but also this will increase our energy security. The energy supply needs to meet the rising demand. The security of supply needs to be ensured and less dependent, and the energy infrastructure needs to evolve as well, but not at the cost of the consumers. Of course, we need to find the right balance between the efforts that we have to make in order to achieve these goals, to be fit for 55, to reach the Green Deal, but in the end also, of course, to produce more energy, clean energy. In the same time, we need to look at the competitiveness of our industry and, of course, the prices for the consumers. And today we are in a context where the prices of energy are incredibly high. Of course, it's not because of Green Deal, and it's very clear, and we need to say that, because I saw some enemies of the Green Deal efforts to try to put the blame on the Green Deal. It's clear that we talk about international price fluctuations. We still have an old infrastructure maintenance. We, of course, have this situation also because of the game that Gazprom was playing to increase profits and the dependence of some EU countries on its resources. It's true that there is also a situation with the speculations of EU ETS that may climb the price of carbon allowances. But what we experience now is mainly because of our dependence of import of gases, and most of this gas is imported from the east, from the Russian Federation. And this is something that we should be aware for the future. And the renewables in general and the solar in particular are very good solutions in order to reduce our dependencies and increase our security of supply. I believe that not only the increase of renewable energy uptake not only will reduce the dependency and increase our security, but also on the medium and long term, it is expected to decrease substantially the energy bills. That's why I stress the need to better capitalize on our potential and strengthen our efforts to large-scale deployment of renewables like solar power. You know that we are discussing now in European Parliament, and it was mentioned before, and thank you for mentioning this, that RED II directive is under revision with more ambitious targets. And of course, I'm sure that at least what was proposed by European Commission will be the final result after the two co-legislators will take the decisions, and then of course we'll have to negotiate and coordinate the two positions. And then of course every member state, including my country Romania, will have to align their targets to the general target of European Union. And this directive, together with other incentives from the Fit for 55 package, are set to drive the renewable power market in all European countries, especially for wind power and solar technologies, and to reduce power imports that have been high in 2019 and 2020. And at least for Romania, I believe that the great potential is the solar, because it's clear that here we have a lot of opportunities, and we have to invest and to take advantage of these opportunities. Solar power already provides a key contribution to the European energy mix. More than 10% of the electricity generation came from the solar power, but we need more, as I said, and the potential is much higher. So we need to continue investing and incentivizing the renewables in general and the solar in particular. I will finish by saying that also it's not only the political will, it's not only the legislative incentives. We need also to find the good solutions for investment, and we need also to invest in infrastructure. So not only the production means, but also the infrastructure in order to accommodate all new investments. And here we have also European funds. We have the recovery and resilience facilities. In Romania, we just started to use this on one hand to support investments in renewables, in production of energy from renewables. On the other hand, of course, to upgrade our grid and our transport system. And also we count a lot on the modernization funds. Here the possibility and the opportunity is even higher in terms of budget than resilience and recovery facility. And we need to use the whole potential of the modernization fund in order to have everything settled. We need to increase the renewable and the solar contribution in all national energy mix. And once again, I need to stress that we need the clear policies, the good incentives, the money from MFF, Green Deal package, resilience and recovery facility, modernization fund, taxonomy will help a lot to have access to finance from investment funds and from banks. So we have more or less all the ingredients in order to be successful. The last word, and is the last, because I know that today you talk also about the clawback situation. I know that the compensation law in Romania, it is not ideal. In the same time, we need to take some compensation measures for the population and for the, at least for the small and medium enterprises. And for this, we need more revenues to the budget. So we need to find also the good balance here. And of course, we need that all these kind of measures to have a tax, extraordinary tax on some profits made by the rise of energy prices should be temporary and should be short-term solutions, because on the long term, it is clear that we need the right incentives for investment in the energy sector. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Christian, for your introductory remarks. Very uplifting in terms of we need to go faster on renewables. I can confirm from our own figures that Romania has a great potential when it comes to solar. So we would hope that we would see a lot of solar development, in particular in Romania as well. I think we're very much aware of the fact that member states need to strike a balance, helping or keeping citizens happy in the end, because I think there's a huge risk we're facing that that citizens will not be happy at all anymore if these very high energy prices continue. So we very much see that member states need to react to that, but then also make sure that renewables are further developed and provide for a stable regulatory framework, because in the end, that's what we've seen some 10 years back. If you don't have that stable regulatory framework, the development of renewables is collapsing. So there is really a need of striking that balance, and it is a balancing act for sure. So let us now look into some concrete examples. Romania, Spain, and finally also Italy, how these clawback measures have been taken by the respective governments and what the effects are. We've been discussing in our prep call whether we should grant more time to the speakers depending on how many clawback measures were taken in these countries, or depending on their complexity. But we finally agreed to give everyone around 5 minutes. I would like to hand over to you, Mihai. Balan first, Executive Director of the Romanian Solar Associations, Rpia. So please tell us more what's happening in Romania, Mihai. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation, for the nice introduction. I must say that I'm deeply honored to speak and be part of this high-level lineup, and I also have to say that I'm grateful to Mr. Bușoi for his very positive, his very uplifting message, which is a sign in the right direction. Coming back to the measures that have been taken by Romania in dealing with this energy price crisis. The Romanian authorities responded back in November last year to the massive rise in spike in energy prices that was affecting consumers, both household consumers and industrial consumers, and they decided to put forward a pack of measures. The most controversial one was related to applying a clawback tax to renewable and other clean electricity producers, hydro and nuclear as well, of 80% of what is above 450 lei. This is roughly 90 euros per megawatt hour. What is important to stress is that the clawback mechanism, as introduced by the Romanian authorities, basically discriminates between electricity producers, as it is only applied to clean energy producers, while fossil fuel generators, whether they're gas or coal, are exempted from this mechanism, leading to an unlevel playing field between market participants and potentially distorting signals for power dispatch in Romania and also in the region, because we are interconnected with our neighboring markets. And we must say that this is a direct risk to increase Romania's efforts of reducing CO2 emissions in the short term and also on medium term. Coming back to the renewable energy industry in Romania and the effects this tax has on it, we must underline that the way this tax is applied in Romania is quite detrimental to the industry. Also because of the existing legislative and regulatory framework that has been in place in Romania and still is in place, because until very recently, the primary legislation, the energy law in Romania, basically forced energy producers, including renewable energy producers, to trade mostly on short-term markets. PPAs were not allowed, long-term PPAs were not allowed in Romania. Therefore, this meant exposing very much the renewable producers to very high balancing costs due to the nature of the solar and wind technologies. And they also lacked the necessary market instruments to mitigate for the financial impact that the variability of the solar technology has. To be more concrete on this, the main negative impact of the clawback measure and how it was applied in Romania comes from the fact that whilst the revenue of these renewable producers are taxed at very high level, the costs that are incurred to serve the existing electricity contracts are not taken into account. And I'm talking here also about the costs of balancing, because producers have to go into the day-ahead market, the balancing market, and buy electricity at a very high price just to offer the profile that they sold beforehand. And basically the costs on the day-ahead market, as you know, and on the balancing market have increased considerably over the last months, and they are still at a very high level, and we don't see any positive signals that they are going to come back to more reasonable levels. And this imbalance and the way that the clawback measure in Romania don't take into account also the costs, but only take into account the revenues. All these factors affect the financial stability of renewable power producers in Romania, and it is not the signal that we want to send in these very dire moments when, besides the energy transition that must be already underway, because we know that Romania has a very big capacity deficit that needs to be covered mostly by renewables. But also we have to take into account that we need to reduce our dependency on fossil resources import well, supply chains that have become unstable and unpredictable. This is a key objective even on short term, and the way the clawback measure generates insecurity in potential investors is not a step in the right direction.
Thanks very much, Mihai. I don't know, Christian, whether you want to react to that immediately, or whether you want to also listen to the contributions of the Spanish and Italian colleagues.
I'm still here, so I'm looking forward to see other countries' situation.
Okay, perfect. So I'll hand over to Pedro Gonzalez, Director of Regulation from the Spanish Association of Electric Power Companies, AELEC. And Pedro, you claim that you have most measures you're going to present. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to share with you and to comment the measures adopted in Spain in a critical moment. Basically, as you have mentioned, in Spain we have more market intervention than in any other place in Europe, and it could be important to share with you in which the type of measure that has been adopted. As you perfectly know, in Spain, as is happened in the rest of the European countries, natural gas prices has increased a lot, 5 times higher than at the beginning 1 year ago, and CO2 prices obviously are 3 times higher than 1 year ago. So this has created an upward pressure on the electricity pool prices that are well above 100 euros per megawatt hour. The main difference that we have in Spain with the rest of the European countries is that we have a regulated tariff that directly introduces the hourly spot prices into the end user bill. So this means that about 40% of households are using this regulated tariff and are directly affected by these spot price increases in the last year. So this has created enormous social impact, and the government, the Spanish government, decided to adopt a number of measures. Some of them are fully aligned with the European toolbox issued last October. Basically, we are talking about fiscal and budgetary measures with the reduction of the VAT, or with the reduction of the special tax on electricity, or the reduction of a 7% tax on generation that we have in Spain. And in addition, the use of revenues coming from the CO2 rights, from the action of the CO2 rights, are also used to cover the electricity system cost. In addition to this, the Spanish government also implemented a measure related with vulnerable customers. For those vulnerable customers, in case of non-payment, they also introduced a minimum supply level, which are also aligned with the European toolbox and the things that are fully aligned with the directive and the regulation on the internal electricity market. However, in addition to this, there are 3 different measures that, in our view, are not aligned with the traditional view of the European Commission, that are clearly market interventions. 2 of them are a deduction of revenues as a result of the impact of high gas prices and CO2 prices on electricity wholesale market prices. And the third one is the obligation imposed to for companies to auction 25% of their non-emitting and non-intermittent generation, basically nuclear and hydro production. So very briefly, what are the type of measures adopted so far? Well, the first one related with the impact of natural gas prices on electricity spot prices. Basically, this measure is at present in vigor. Basically, what it says is that when the gas price is above 20 euros per megawatt hour in the gas market. Non-emitting generators, that is nuclear power, hydropower, and renewables without regulated remuneration, they must pay an amount per megawatt hour they produce that is equivalent to the gas price increase in the electricity market. Basically, this means that with present gas prices, we are talking about something like easily 100 euros per megawatt hour. In the beginning, this measure was adopted for all non-emitting generators that I commented before. However, lately, this measure was amended by limiting the impact only to those generators that did not sell their power at a long-term fixed price. Why? Because it is obvious that at the moment that the generators had sold their energy for a long-term period, they were breaking contracts and affecting them by assuming a tax that was in many cases well above the contract prices they were receiving. In addition to this, there's a second proposal that is at present in the Parliament, still under discussion. But basically, instead of being related with the natural gas prices, it is related with the CO2 prices. The idea is quite similar. When the CO2 price is above 21 euros per ton of CO2, and now is at 90 euros per ton of CO2, the generators must pay an amount per megawatt hour produced that is also equivalent to the CO2 price increase in the electricity. Basically, at present, this would mean a reduction in revenues of about 800 million euros per year. So these are the two measures related with the deduction, apart from the additional one with the obligation to auction the 25%. And overall, our view on this is that it is true that, as Christian has also mentioned, this energy bill source is affecting industries, citizens, and we acknowledge also the high concerns on the energy affordability. But what it is striking is that at the moment that the natural gas price is the main driver in the high prices that we are seeing in the electricity market, it is quite striking that all those generators that you have mentioned also in the beginning that are avoiding the impact and reducing our external dependency are treated with additional taxes. This introduces large uncertainty, not only for existing renewable generators, but also for future investments. And as Christian has mentioned in the beginning, we have an ambitious target for 2030, and the breaking of the investors' confidence and the deterioration of this confidence as a result of this high regulatory uncertainty, basically what creates is that the energy transition will be more expensive and slower. And I stop here. Maybe we can comment on additional things. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. Very clear. High uncertainties in Spain. How does the situation look like in Italy? Alessio Cipollo, if you could join me, Head of Technical Affairs at Elettricità Futura, the voice of the Italian electricity sector. Please tell us more how the measures that the Italian government has taken look like.
Well, thank you very much, Walburga. Thank you very much for inviting us and myself to this very important webinar. It comes at a very difficult moment, as we all know, but at the right time for many reasons. And many thanks to Mr. Bujoy, because I have to say that I completely share the view and the message that we need to defend the Green Deal, we need to defend the Fit for 55, because it's actually it's not the enemy of the situation we're seeing now. It's probably the most powerful tool we have to reduce the exposure to the volatility we are seeing here, and to deploy more renewables, and of course to place a bigger role on the, let's say, European energy and electricity production. So thank you very much for your words as well. Going back to Italy, just to put into context, today 40% of the electricity in Italy is generated by using renewables, and the rest, out of the 60%, more than 50% is from natural gas. So Italy is probably one of, in terms of percentage, most exposed countries in Europe regarding the price and the situation we are seeing. So it is indeed very, very critical moment. In terms of the measures that have been taken, of course, we've seen spikes in the energy bills. Something is starting to affect the society at many different levels. Government has taken various actions to emergency actions, such as reducing taxes, removing some of the levies from the energy bills for many of the consumers, strengthening measures for the lower income parts of the society. So there's been a number of measures taken, and most notably, of course, the so-called clawback measures. There are some very recent news. In fact, we expect some modification today by new decree. But what we have right now is the decree that was issued at the end of January, and essentially the measure that was taken, the clawback measure, was regarding certain categories of renewable, putting turning a number of contracts into two-way CFD contracts, which I have to say, with a very complex mechanism to define the reference price, and also defining certain categories that would be included. From the original measures, all power that was contracted forward was excluded unless the contract price was, let's say, above a certain level. So again, one of the key feedback we've actually given to the government in a recent hearing we did at the parliament was, well, the way it is shaped, the current mechanism, it wouldn't work. It's very complex, and as I've heard from my colleagues from Romania and from Spain, most of all breaks investors' confidence. And at a critical time where we actually need to accelerate on renewable deployment, this is very, very critical. And so that's why we've taken a sort of hard line against this measure we're taking forward to the government. The other thing, which was sort of very interesting to our opinion, was very recently Italy has introduced the climate environment protection in the constitution, and then the clawback measure have also been introduced, which from our first analysis, in the first shape that we saw those measures, there are many elements that go against the Italian constitution as well. So this is another critical element. Very recent news, yesterday we heard from the Minister of Ecological Transition there would be some important changes to this measure, potentially simplification, reduction of the impact of the measures. We are looking forward to the decree. It was originally planned for tomorrow, but of course with the current situation, we will see whether the agenda will actually be changed. But for sure, we're looking forward to those changes. I will conclude this initial talk just to say that what we really need to do in Italy, the real problem we see is that we are installing renewables at a very slow pace. We need to install, today we have around 60 gigawatt of renewable capacity. We think we need to install, we need to double that, more than double that, 70 gigawatt of new renewable capacity by 2030. Most of it, 50 gigawatt of new capacity, will be solar because of the the features of the Italian structure. And today we only install 1 gigawatt per year. We should install around 8 gigawatt per year and every year until 2030 if we want to reach the target. So if we really want to tackle the energy crisis situation, we need to accelerate. And we have this powerful tool. We can do it at a short time scale. I will just conclude with a figure. Our TSO has already around 170 gigawatt of requests on the high voltage line of connections. So this means that investors are there, projects are there. We need to swift and simplify permitting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alessio, for your contribution. I don't know whether we still have Christian Buschoy with us, because I understood that he needed to. Yeah, perfect. We just don't hear you yet.
I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, great.
Yeah,
so maybe still some reactions from your side on you've heard we need to go faster. You said it yourself, but we also need investor confidence. Maybe we could get some takeaways from you from the 3 presentations we just had on the clawback measures.
First of all, of course, good to hear that everybody agrees that solar power is a solution for the rise of energy prices, at least for the medium and long term. Of course, it is difficult to do it immediately. It will take some time, but it's clearly a sustainable solution for the future. Second, next week, European Commission will update the toolbox. And I understand, speaking with Commissioner these days, that emphasis will be to the deployment of the renewables and the increase of the renewables and support to renewables in order to have as a solution. So here it could be a good impetus, a good signal for renewables in general and for solar investments. Thirdly, of course, as it was mentioned, the toolbox gave the member states the possibility to have some state aid measures, state aid supported measures, compensation measures, support the vulnerable and not only the vulnerable consumers. And for this, some of the member states needed resources. And some of the resources, as you said, Mrs. Chair of Solar Power Europe, and the distinguished guest said, were based also on this type of clawback measures or special taxation like in Romania, which I have to admit that it was a measure introduced and imagined as a principle even before the energy crisis. So it was introduced a little bit before. What I would say is that from European level, it's difficult to interfere with member states' decisions as long as they respect the national law and the European law. It was mentioned about the constitution. I think Italy case, of course, if it's not respecting the constitution, this will be changed, but it should, some instance will have to decide that it's not constitutional. What I will advocate is that those member states which are taking this kind of measures should make very clear that are temporary measures and only linked to the extraordinary situation with the high increase of energy prices, because otherwise we'll disincentivize investments in clean technologies and renewables, and this is not in line with our with the general objectives, Green Deal Fit for 55. As long as we do it temporary and it's clear that will remain temporary and of course should be balanced and proportionate, this is also a case to be discussed in some member states, then could be accepted in an exceptional situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And maybe one last question, because I know you need to leave, but we were going to discuss still about the toolbox the European Commission is updating in a couple of days. Some are claiming that what we see now has to do with dysfunctional markets, Do you think that anything has to be changed in terms of how we are organizing our markets in Europe?
No, I don't think so. And it is very dangerous to start now to regulate markets and to regulate prices. It will be difficult and also dangerous for the future. What we should look a little bit closer is the EU ETS scheme and how we can prevent in the future pure speculation to increase very much the price of EU ETS, because this put a burden also on different industries. Of course, this disincentivizes the fossil fuels and gives a clear help to the renewables and help us to reach our goals, but we have to be balanced also here. So here we should look a little bit closely, but also there we cannot impose a price or a limit, but see if there are some mechanism in order not to have pure speculation there, but to have a mechanism which helps to get our to arrive to our goals. But otherwise, we should remain in a competitive environment. We should leave the market to establish the rules. If from external causes like it is today, or from other causes, we have high prices increase, then we could put in place compensation measures, helping the vulnerables, look a little bit to what are the causes and prevent in the future, have more renewables, look to other gas supply for the transition period. We'll still have gas, but not regulate the price and the markets.
Is there anything you would want to see, and that's the very last question, in the in the toolbox the European Commission is revising at this point in time? What should be in there from your point of view?
I had a conversation last evening with Commissioner Kadri Simpson, but I cannot reveal the details because this will be adopted most probably next Wednesday in the College of Commissioners. Some concrete measures, but also some strategic measures will be also proposed. Most probably, Commissioner Simpson will come next Thursday to ITRE committee to present this and also to look a little bit to the situation in Ukraine. It is very dangerous. It is very grave. Not only, of course, first because of the human and potential loss of human lives and the tragedies of the war. This is clearly. But also we have to look to the economic impact and energy impact. And now European Commission, Commissioner Simpson, President von der Leyen are actively seeking backup solutions from different other suppliers, because we cannot install overnight solar capacities to be ready in a few weeks. This is a medium and long process. So we'll need some gas from Algeria, from Qatar, from Norway, and from other countries to increase their production and their offer to European countries in case something catastrophic is happening with the East gas. So next week she will come, we'll discuss all these things, and it will be more clear the measures, but I can assure you that the measures are very good.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for taking the time. Very insightful. Thanks for joining us, Christian Buscher, and all the best for your further work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the best to you too.
I would like to ask Sasha Riesner now to join us for the debate, Director of Power Markets at Lightsource BP. And I would also like to invite you who have joined us for this webinar to pose your questions. So we have a possibility here in the GoToMeeting tool that you can also submit your questions to the speakers, and we will take them during our Q&A at the end of this session. So please engage and please put your questions in the dedicated question area. Sasha, thanks very much for joining us. My first question goes to you, because given the current circumstances, given given what Russia has been doing the last couple of hours, how are power markets reacting to the latest developments in the Ukraine? Can you tell us a little bit more?
So yeah, we've seen today and in the last couple of days a significant impact on the global energy markets, and this is sort of across the energy complex and affecting all markets across Europe. So as an example, we see Brent crude exceeding $105 today, which is the highest it's been since 2014. Near term, so day ahead gas prices have continued to rise and are at a 2-month high. And then I think quite importantly, we're then seeing that impact go further through the curve. So we're seeing record levels of calendar 2023 power prices across many European markets. I think it's really difficult to comment at this really early stage and with the level of uncertainty on what the impact would be, how far things will go and for how long this will be felt.
Thanks a lot. Already before the invasion, the European Commission in the toolbox said that we have to look at least until 2023 to see very high prices. I think that needs to be revised against the latest developments in any way. As we talked about the toolbox with Christian Buschei right now and markets, I would also like to get your views on whether you think that the markets have not functioned in the way they should function, and what you think the toolbox should be taking up in the revised version, or what's already working and what should be used more than clawback measures in order to get that balance, helping European citizens, helping European companies to handle the energy prices, but at the same time making sure that the solution we have at hand, maybe not tomorrow, but midterm. And I would say when it comes to solar, we can also react very quickly because solar can be installed relatively quickly, but not tomorrow, obviously. So what is it that we need to do in order to get us on track to have more renewables? Maybe I just start with you, Alessio, because you nodded, and then I'll also pass on to the others.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, this is, I mean, the figures that Zosia explained are very, very clear. If I was looking at the day ahead price for electricity in Italy, and it's 280 euros per megawatt hour, which is just yesterday was around 200, so it's skyrocketing, unfortunately. And the situation is of course very uncertain for the future, but at the same time, I mean, it will probably last for some time, and so we need to take into account of this, of course. Going back to the toolbox and back to October, we really welcome the contents of the toolbox in terms of, I would say, two major elements: permitting, speeding up permitting, and PPAs, because we think those are critical. And if I look back at the Italian situation, of course, permitting is a major bottleneck, and so anything that is going the direction of simplifying permitting is definitely very much welcome. The other point on markets, this is a very critical element, very timely, market design. I mean, we have the system marginal pricing. It has been working for many years, but at the same time, so we think, of course, it is our starting point. We cannot destroy the way the market works, but at the same time we need to make sure the market becomes fit for renewables, or fit for 55, as you want to define it. And this means a number of things in my opinion. So what we need to do is to make sure that the signal from the renewables, so the lower LCOE that is carrying on decreasing as we go, taking into account storage as well and flexibility, we need to make sure this can be transferred to the final bill. Of course, it's a very complex task, but some of the key elements have been mentioned and needs to be definitely pursued. Is in defining the market, we need to define tools to promote auctions, including storage as well, as we look into the future, because storage will essentially is essential to make sure that renewables, solar, wind can be integrated into the system. So this is a very important tool. At the same time, PPAs. Italy is probably, well, without probably, is lagging behind in terms of volumes compared to other markets, the country. I make reference, for instance, to Spain, just a name an example. And PPAs are very, again, very powerful tool, but needs to be promoted. It needs to be widespread. And this can help also mitigating the volatility of the prices that we see. So I would say this is in a nutshell. Just to conclude on the update of the toolbox, to say that we, of course, we're analyzing the contents of the leaked version that we're seeing on the press. We're also seeing there's specific actions and annex related to clawback measures, sort of kind of opening to clawback measure, but putting some sort of criteria. And we're looking at it with a concern, because we think that clawback measure in itself can be harmful for the reasons we are seeing. And of course, in Italy, we sort of experience this type of aspect. So we're looking at it with concern, I would say. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Pedro, can I pass on to you?
Well, thank you. I fully agree with Alexio's comment on this. But before this, what is a striking thing is that in relation with this communication, there's the asymmetry between the electricity and the fossil fuel alternatives, in the sense that there are a number of recommendations for the natural gas. We think that there's no measure on oil, no diesel or gasolines, but a number of proposals to allow for a market intervention in the case of the electricity sector, which is something that is quite striking. At the moment that, as all of you have said in the beginning, the first part of the toolbox on October, and as Christian has also said, the new recommendation of this new toolbox has to do with the promotion of renewables as the way to accelerate not only the climate change targets that we have, but also as a useful tool to solve this crisis and to reduce our external dependency on fossil fuels. And also, as Alexio has said, permitting process is a key part on this, and we need to accelerate this process, and this is the way. But what is not compatible is to try to foster the deployment or the massive deployment of renewables with market interventions at the moment that non-marginal technologies are not creating this problem, just are avoiding this problem, and the massive deployment of new renewables will avoid our external dependency. In the case of Italy, as Alessio has said before, 50% of total demand is provided by gas, but they will reduce this market exposure to gas at the moment that they will increase their renewables in their system until 2030 with the targets that they have set. The same happened in Spain with less exposure to the natural gas market, but what is different to understand in our view is that those technologies that are not creating this problem are the ones that can be intervened in terms of market, then creating a lot of uncertainty for those agents that are fully involved in this process, banks or utilities or companies that are trying to or are queuing for this permitting process. Maybe now they will decide to delay their investment decision, which is something really wrong and a bad situation for all of us. So this is a deep change in the traditional view of the European Commission if these type of things included in a toolbox, in the next toolbox at the moment, because they are allowing for a split in the European market. And what we had so far here in Europe, it was a stable legal and regulatory framework. That's very clear. And this allowed us to massively invest in renewables in the last 10 years, or last 15 years, and to comply with the target that we have for 2020 and trying to increase our ambition for 2030. At the moment that this market is broken, what is going to see the investor in the renewable sector is that we have different countries, and depending on the country when you are looking at, you have different risk profiles. So at the moment that you have different risk profiles, those countries with more market interventions will be those markets with higher risk profiles and with higher or more expensive investments in renewables. So this is something completely against the view or the traditional view of the European Commission. Thank you.
Indeed, thanks very much, Pedro. That's what we've seen in the past, that it is detrimental to the development of renewables. Mihai, can I ask you, measures are too much focused on those technologies which have to do the trick, renewables? Do you share this view? And what would you want to see in the revised toolbox of the European Commission? Is there anything still missing, or is there too much in the drafts we've I think all seen? Your view.
A tricky question indeed, because we still have to wait to see the final version, but the draft is encouraging on some sides, but not that encouraging on other sides. And I fully agree with what Alessio and Pedro were saying before me. And just to build upon on Pedro's last idea, that it should not create any more issues for countries that already have a high risk profile, and for example Romania, and we are used to unstable legal and regulatory framework, and this has led us to not installing any new RES capacities in the last 7 years, none. This has to change. And also commenting a bit on the situation on the energy, on the commodity prices today following Russia's intervention, I think that thinking about the fact that the current gas prices will continue to remain high over the next years or so, this definitely closes whatever window of opportunity investments in fossil gas had until now. So the only way to install new capacities quickly and address capacity deficit and high energy prices is definitely stays with renewables. Coming back to Romania, as I said before, there were no new investments in the last 7 years. These investments would have helped, and we only have 8 years left to 2030, and very high targets, very ambitious targets. Just looking at our market, I must say that the market is ready to respond. There are more than 30 gigawatts of RES projects in various stages of development at the moment in Romania. Probably more than 20 are solar. Also having a look at the Fit for 55 and the plans that the country has, or maybe said the plans that the European Union has for the country, there's probably going to be more than 10 gigawatts of renewable capacities to be installed in the next 8 years. Plus the refurbishment of the existing capacities in reaching their end of life. 65% of these 10 gigawatts will definitely be solar. It's our estimation. And we also have to take into account that investments in renewables and solar particularly are vehicles of social progress, particularly in countries as Romania. They create jobs and they have the possibility of creating local value, because we are looking today at the problems we have with the gas supply chain and how dependent we are on one source, but it's the same issue we are facing in the solar sector. And I'm very glad that the European Commission, backed by Solar Power Europe, is taking steps in this direction, trying to create a domestic value chain, because the intellectual property is in Europe, the technology is European. So we have a way of creating value here at domestic European level, and this will further create value all across the European Union while installing renewables. Just to summarize a bit on what's coming next with the guidelines that are going to be put forward by the Commission next week, and also the measures that are taken and will be taken at member state level. I think we should do our best to not endanger our future, but not by not knowing what to do with our present. And it is our role as the industry to strongly advocate for cautious measures that will protect investments, while in the same time bringing the benefits to the consumers, who we must say are, and we are also consumers, and we are also affected by the current situation.
Thanks a lot, Mihai. Now, the high energy prices, we've talked about the reactions of the Romanian, the Italian, the Spanish government to the measures which have been taken. Now, let's look a little bit more into the solutions. Sosha, can the current high energy prices also have a positive effect in terms of sending the right signals to trigger investments into solar PV systems, and also in particular to PPAs? Will we see more prosumers because of the high energy prices? Just like that, just because it's triggered by energy prices, or is there more that needs to be done?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. And of course, high energy prices will deliver a market signal for investment into PV, no doubt. Lightsource BP are seeing energy intensives, and in fact all sorts of energy buyers now looking at PPAs as a solution to manage their exposure to these high prices. So as well as looking at them as a way of reducing the carbon footprint, PPAs are an important part of managing energy price risk. But of course, you know, there's the opportunity for solar and PPAs in Europe in absence of the current high and volatile prices. So it's not that we're looking to take advantage of the current situation. Rather, we see that by accelerating, we have the opportunity to be part of the solution to the high energy prices, at the same time accelerating the low carbon transition. So we can deploy solar PV quickly, and in I think at least 5 of the major European economies, solar has the lowest LCOE. So clearly there is an opportunity there to solve the crisis. We need to deliver quickly and at scale. And of course, like by removing blockers, that will help project development, and it will help with us solving the current crisis. So for us, that's removing delays to permitting and making it more flexible in how we can connect to grid so that we can connect quickly. And we welcome the support that's anticipated and what is expected to come out of the European Commission in this area. However, I think we need to be careful that going beyond removing blockers towards these sort of short-term interventions we've seen in the market, particularly retrospective measures, can be quite unhelpful, and from the developer perspective, this can undermine the opportunity that we have and actually decelerate the low carbon transition and slow down our ability to help solve high energy prices by deploying low cost solar. So for us, it's really important that any intervention in the market doesn't sort of undermine that premise of the long-term PPA, which we've seen become so successful in recent years, by allowing it to provide price certainty both for the buyer and for the seller. We really have 3 main routes to market, as all generators do, with auction schemes, PPAs and merchant. And actually, if you look at the impact of the clawbacks that have been introduced, for example, in Spain and Italy, those have had an impact on all 3 of those routes to market. So we can, in confidence, across the spectrum of routes to market, and in some cases actually delaying PPA processes and having a negative impact on the PPA market, and creating just complexity, which makes it harder to execute and deliver. And I think lastly, it's really important to remember, not too long ago in 2020, we saw prices plummet. We saw record low prices and extreme periods of, well, not extreme periods, but extremely low prices, and for the first time, negative pricing in many markets for extended periods. And as an industry, the solar industry absorbed that impact. There was no intervention. So I think the potential that in the future we'll see both periods of low pricing and high pricing. We need to be really careful and ensure that intervention is not only, you know, in the form of clawbacks when prices are high, sending a really difficult messages, and damaging investor confidence. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Sosha, for the reminder as well that it's working both ways. At the moment, we're seeing very high prices, but we also have seen already very low prices. You've shed a light on the importance of PPAs and how much we need to also make sure that PPAs can work. Looking at the smaller consumers, looking at prosumers, could I maybe ask the other ones to comment on, whether you think that the current very high energy prices would have an effect of more prosumers coming on stage, or whether that is whether the current situation is making it more difficult, and what it needs actually to see more prosumers. Who wants to go first?
Maybe me.
Yeah, Pedro?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is obvious that at the moment that you see high energy prices, and the alternative in the case of self-consumption or these type of alternatives are attractive for customers, and this will likely accelerate the implementation of solar PV home solutions for many customers. The problem is that this is not allowed for all the customers, because it's more easy to be applied at the moment that you have single homes instead of multi traditional buildings. So it's a solution and a valid solution for many customers. But what we need at the households and in the case of small companies, what is interesting is to understand how the market work in the case of the electricity. Maybe what would be interesting is to promote the use of long-term fixed prices. As Sofia was commenting, it's quite interesting the possibility of these PPAs. Maybe these PPAs could be spread to small customers and could be easily accessed by many small customers, and this could be a solution for those that cannot implement this self-consumption solution. And this is something that is very interesting in the sense that part of the analysis made by the European Commission is completely out of the actual working of electricity markets, in the sense that they say, well, okay, there are not enough forward markets, but maybe it's because of the regulation, because the regulation incentivizes in many cases that solar producers will sell to the spot price, because they are penalized in the case that they don't sell at the wholesale market price, as it happens in the case of Spain, because they have to pay taxes, or maybe they can obtain less revenues if they are not seeing the spot price. So maybe the type of solutions and the type of changes are necessarily linked to the promotion of long-term markets and long-term solutions, more stable prices for not only for households, but also for the industry and for small and medium enterprises.
Alessio, long-term markets.
Indeed. No, I completely agree the points that Sosia and Pedro raised. And going back to your question, Walburga, about prosumers and about the involvement of citizens in the transition, it is indeed a very important topic. We think that this, of course, will grow in a very significant way in the next years. What we see today, of course, energy communities as a very important resource to accelerate around that. In Italy, one of the key measures being discussed in the recent years is a so-called super bonus. It's basically a very generous tax return on projects involving, let's say, energy transition features, going from batteries to solar PV. And this, I mean, has boosted to some extent the possibility of renovating and then including, of course, solar into the renovation, because it was a key element to access the bonus. So this is a topic of great interest we are following. In Italy, what we have is that the regulation has been introduced, but at this moment in time, as energy communities are not widely spread. And we think that also in the case of energy communities, a greater involvement of professional operators, like big operators, can be very helpful indeed, because they have the knowledge, they have the possibility, and so opening up along those lines would be very helpful, without the need of duplicating networks and so be inefficient from the network's point of view. And then again, PPAs, just to, I mean, we discussed about the importance of the measure, just to give the situation in Italy. At the moment, we are discussing at, let's say, government, institutional level of a sort of a preliminary PPA platform that might help the intake and the development of PPAs. We think it needs to go faster, because we really need platforms to make sure that operators and the actors, stakeholders can access it, and consumers as well. So this is a topic of great interest, and we feel that Italy should definitely accelerate. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So until now, I hear the energy prices, the high energy prices, only will not do the trick. It needs to be, it need to be also other measures. And you just mentioned, Alessio, the super bonus in Italy. I would like to connect my previous question when handing over to you, Mihai, with that super bonus, which I understand is also promoting storage and the deployment of storage, because we also depend on gas for flexibility services and peak demand times. So how can we make sure not only that we can protect companies with PPAs, protect consumers by being prosumers, but also get these flexibilities into the market? How can solar PV be best friends with smart inverters, electrolyzers, battery storage, demand response? So how can we incentivize that?
Well, just to have a short answer, through electrification. And the need to accelerate electrification is now higher than ever. We see this every day. And batteries are the go-to solution for ensuring that solar PV is the suitable situation, is the suitable technology for more and more situations, both consumer and industrial. And indeed, it can really replace gas as a peaker technology, as a balancing technology, and the price signals are now here. Very encouragingly, we also have the funds for this. So we have the National Recovery and Resilience Plans. Some countries, almost half of Europe, has the modernization fund as well, which benefits from the high EU ETS prices. And the investments in renewables must go hand in hand with investments in storage facilities, in electrolyzers. Why not? Because this helps us decarbonize industry and also alleviate the pressure on gas consumption in industry as well, while decarbonizing this sector. Why not heat pumps? So basically, all in all, we have the funds to start the era of electrification, and we have to start it as soon as possible. This is where the authorities need to get a bit more ambitious and have produce strategies, produce visibility for the investors, because we have signals from the market that they are ready to respond not only in renewable capacities but also in storage and electrolyzers. And coming back to the market design solutions that the authorities might have, well, we finally got some great news from the Romanian authorities at the end of last year. Finally, the Romanian law allowed PPAs, which were banned for the last 10 years or so, with the direct result in no RES investments. Now PPAs are available, and they really are a solution for the current situation. Even the Romanian authorities now today say that we must do anything to reduce the volumes from the day-ahead market, which is, I don't know, 65% of the current market in Romania, and go to long-term contracts. This is the direction in which we are going, and PPAs are, of course, essential for this. But there's also some big news in the recent law changes for prosumers, and the fact that prosumers of up to 200 kilowatt will receive quantitative compensation for the energy they produce in the next, well, up until 2030. Due to the seasonality that's in certain geographies, Romania included, this is great news. We see that this will boost the prosumer sector, both at the small consumers, small prosumers, but also medium industrial ones. We see some very important signals from the markets that we are seeing large industries installing their own solar plants. And we are also seeing that a recent program by the Romanian authorities for small PV installation for household consumers has been massively oversubscribed. This is great news. What we expect to see more is well, ambition from the authorities and more flexibility, so that these programs can be put together faster, and well, the money should be spent faster and in a very transparent and competitive manner, just to make sure that we spend them correctly.
Thanks a lot, Mihai. Sosha, over to you on the flexibility services we need. We've also heard Christian Buscher in the very beginning saying that what it needs is not just reaching the Fit for 55 goals, but also ensuring security of supply. Basically, that's base load. We need renewables, we need solar 24/7. So what kind of flexibilities do we need, and how can we incentivize those?
Yeah, I agree. You can only go so far with solar, and you need to combine it with other technologies and flexibility in order to really support the energy transition. For me, I think there's examples around the world where investment will come into flexibility when the market design is there and the market's appropriate. So where we can see clarity, particularly medium to long-term clarity on the revenue stack and opportunity, then of course both solar developers and other developers and investors will look at the opportunity to invest in solar, storage and other flexibility, flexible assets alongside the solar. So I think there are case studies, there are examples of where it's been done well and examples of where it's been done less well. There's the opportunity to take from those examples and to implement the clarity and the regulations that will allow that investment. I think just as with the wholesale power markets, that the important thing will be that there's that consistency in approach and the stability around those revenue stacks to encourage that investment.
Thanks a lot, Sosha. I'm now turning to the audience. I see that there are some questions, and I'm just taking the first one, reading it out. What is your view regarding the government incentives that could be given to accelerate rooftop solar and make it a booming and impactful, and make it as booming and impactful as land installations from the previous decades? So what does it need? What kind of incentives do we need to use the spaces on our European roofs, more than 25% of the current electricity production, by the way, to bring some figures from Solar Power Europe? So what does it need? What kind of incentives do we need to see from governments? Who wants to take that question? So who is a rooftop advocate?
Well,
is it the Superbonus from Italy,
yeah.
Pedro?
Yeah, well, at least in Spain, we don't need many things because the solar conditions are quite abundant. So there are some taxes or tax reductions from local authorities that can help to implement this type of solutions, but in principle, it's attractive enough, the technology at the present cost. So we don't need anything specifically. I mean, the numbers are good, the payback is good enough to invest in this type of technologies, and at least in Spain, but maybe for our specific conditions in terms of solar resources, we are in the right way. For instance, last year we invested or we included many new megawatts of new solar roof installations, so at a household level, basically. So which is the smaller level, and if the numbers are good for the small households, are good for the rest of the.
Maybe then the question has to go to Mihai, because Italy has a super bonus. So Mihai, what does it need to see more solar roofs in Romania?
Well, a more lean approach from the ministries that are handling the available funds. They are doing this, they're dispatching funds, but the technical aspects sometimes are blocking more ambition, so they have to get this right. But also we need to look at investments in the grids at the distribution level, which Romania has funds for. And generally, I would say that well, Romania is not as good as Spain for the in terms of solar conditions for rooftop, but it's not bad either. So maybe also some sort of campaign for convincing people that solar energy, rooftop solar energy is secure, it is suitable, and people really have to know more about the legislation that allows them to take benefit from this, because otherwise they just see it as a very expensive technology. They mistrust even now with this crisis in the energy field, they mistrust both basically anything that's related to energy. So it is also our job as an association to communicate better, but also the authorities, and maybe here we can partner up with them and try to promote this at citizen level.
So it's a lot about communication. I take one other question, or maybe Zosia, I didn't want to deprive you from answering. I don't know whether you want to comment also on the rooftop question.
I mean, I think there's a strong case for rooftop at the moment, given the current pricing, and I'd agree with the points made that around communication, building trust, and continue consistent support for that. It's going to be beneficial for everyone.
Thank you. And the next one is a business question, maybe that goes directly to you, even if it's concerning the 3 countries represented here. Are there any incentives or tools available for non-European companies interested in investing in solar farms in Spain, Italy, or Romania? I'm not sure whether it makes a difference between EU or non-EU investors, but maybe you can take that question, Zosia, or anyone else.
I don't think I'd be able to comment on that, unfortunately.
Anyone wants to comment on that one? Otherwise, I still have another question I would like to ask you. I see no strong appetite.
Yeah, very quickly. No, very quickly to say that in Italy we do see interest from national or even international companies. So, and I suppose in the other markets there's not just national companies involved. So the market is quite open at the moment. The problem I've mentioned before is that the volumes are still very low to the potential. So I'm sure that when volumes will become bigger and bigger, there will be more opportunities in general.
Yeah, well, the same situation in Spain. I mean, we need a large amount of investment for this decade, so it's fully open to external agents out of the European Union.
So let that money come in.
Yeah.
My last part of questions are again going back to the market design. Spain and France have suggested marginal improvements to the market design. We already had this question of whether markets have done the trick. whether they have been dysfunctional or not. So now some countries, Spain and France, say, okay, we need to change some elements and have decoupled the spot price from the gas price. So what do you think of these proposals? Are there other market design features that should be updated, or do we just stick to the market design we have?
I think for us, we don't see market design as a challenge to deploying solar at the moment. I know it's difficult to say with such excessively high prices, but to me, in most markets, the market design as it is works quite well. The problem isn't the market design. The problem is the situation that we're facing at the moment. If there is to be enhancements, changes, or evolution of market design to fix problems, I think that the message would be it needs to be done quickly and with clarity, because we just don't want to cause delays by sitting around waiting to see what the outcome of protracted processes will be. I mean, I think it's been very interesting over the last couple of years. We've seen announcements in some countries that are very quick, come out and things change tomorrow, and others have been foreshadowed, and there's been indication over a sort of 12-18 month period that there's going to be change. So trying to respond to both those two extremes and continue to develop solar, which at a large scale takes 2 to 3 years, can be quite difficult.
Thank you, Sosha. Yeah. Any other comments?
Yeah, at least in Spain, the debate is open, and our government has translated this message to the rest of the European Union. But what we see is that what is important is to make a thorough analysis before adopting this type of measure that significantly change the present market design. And in this sense, I have to say that there's a preliminary report made by Acer, issued last year, and now it is expected a new upcoming report, more with a deeper analysis, and it's important to see what the regulator has to say in this regard. In the preliminary assessment, as Sosha has said, our market design fully complies with the targets that is supposed to be used for, in the sense that it attracts investments in renewables, what is the most important thing, and it clearly promotes or penalizes those technologies that are not aligned with the decarbonization process that we have. So the market works, the market, as Sosha said, the problem is not the market design, the problem is the natural gas price. So it is important to really state that there's not a problem in the wholesale market that we have in Europe. But maybe it could be to open maybe a debate to see if the market conditions are good enough to be able to attract more investment than we need in this decade. So if there's a market evolution, should be aligned with this purpose, not to artificially correct external prices coming from other things that are nothing related with the proper market function.
Thanks, Pedro. The others agree?
Yes, I fully agree with Pedro, and well, the discussion about changes to market design is still in incipient stages in Romania, but it occurs. Our opinion is that well, of the solar sector in Romania is that this discussion should be handled quite cautiously, as well, changes to market design would severely impact the necessary price signals for RES investments, for clean energy investments, and not only in generation, but also in storage, flexibility, so on and so forth. But also it would potentially affect the functioning of the EU ETS mechanism. And it's well, because it feeds into the modernization fund. It is basically vital for the good functioning of the financing of the energy transition in half of Europe, as I said before. So as a conclusion, I would just be quite cautious in approaching changes to market design.
Thanks, Mihai. And Alessio, I don't know whether you want to also contribute to that one, because then we have to wrap up. Our time is over, unfortunately.
Very quickly, just to say that indeed, as I mentioned before, we must not destroy the system we have. There is, of course, room for improvement. One thing regarding for instance, the system security side, making sure that storage and other resources can contribute in a more effective way to markets. If I take the example of services market, then if at least taking the case for Italy, having let's say greater participation of renewables, storage, demand side response to those markets would clearly help. So this is an element, of course.
Thanks a lot. If I have to summarize, I would say we all agree that solar is a solution to the high energy prices. We just need to deploy it much faster. And in order to be able to deploy it much faster, we need to have a stable regulatory environment. Clawback measures do not help. We also need to communicate maybe much better to consumers, to European citizens about the solutions at hand. And I think we all agreed that the market design as it stands now, at least at this point in time, should not be changed. And if at all, it also has to be made sure that it does not harm the regulatory stability if we're discussing about changing potentially market design for any long-term future. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to all the distinguished speakers. Thanks also to you, to the audience who have taken time to join the debate and also engage in our discussions. We will be back very soon with a second series of our Shine on Solar, so please stay tuned. We will inform you very soon about new topics we want to discuss with you and discuss with very interesting speakers. Thank you very much for now. Have a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.